Dormitabis is one of the weirdest games ever in my post-lifetime. Released in 2018, Dormitabis got popular by what I call the Markiplier effect. While Markiplier was pretty late with Dormitabis when it got popular, there are plenty of other YouTubers and walkthrough videos with no commentary. It was received well, the graphics were seen as pretty good, and everyone likes the concept of the game. But in what felt like the drop of a hat with the falling speed of paper, everyone had a Sonic 06 experience and was like, hang on. Shit! And then Blackout was exposed to be a shitty person with a screenshot that has since become synonymous with his entire image on the internet. And to add more insult to injury, people started re-listening to the tapes from Purple Guy in that game, and not only did they realize that the VA did a bad job, but the VA was essentially acting out, whatever, everybody knows at this point. Blackout self-inserted himself as Purple Guy and thought it was a good idea to include pedophilia as a crime for the self-insert. That is several layers of fucked up and stupid. Since that horrifying discovery, Blackout has been kicked off the internet. That screenshot I mentioned before is his copy pasta. Thankfully, the remaster of Dormitabis is a remaster specifically designed to pull the game out of the hands of an awful creator. Released on July 31st of this year, 3X Studios has completely remastered the game and did major rewrites to the story. Honestly, aside from the tapes, the story is almost unrecognizable, obviously in a good way. But hey, the dev team did what it wanted and made the game 100 times less shitty person. Mission accomplished, right?
Oh no, it all went wrong!
Seriously? Are you guys fucking dumb? Okay, first off, don't expect me to comment on the situation. It's always best to wait till info comes out first with this kind of stuff. But are you guys fucking morons? You spent at least a year remastering a game to get rid of the pedo crap, and then you get into a controversy where one of the devs is accused of pedo crap? Are you all fucking morons? What the fuck was that 1 year for? So regardless of that development, the game definitely succeeded in its goal to get rid of the bad writing elements. And since I know my limits, and this video should hopefully be coming out on Halloween,
Mission failed. We'll get them next time.
let's do something cool. Like how I look? That's the power of mind-altering discs so strong it fucks with the editing. Oh, come on, you'd rather hear that than the original story of Dormitabis. Oh, another thing, one thing I'm gonna judge this remaster on is based on how it changes from the original Dormitabis, and if it was better or not. I'm not gonna play the original Dormitabis, but with the amount of reviews against OG Dormitabis, keyword against, I could probably figure out how painful the OG Dormitabis was. I am gonna be talking a lot about mechanics from the original. I'll try to explain in detail what is important, but if you want to know, just watch a walkthrough or even a Yaz video on Dormitabis. It explains almost everything about the original. Oh yeah, and as a heads up, I might have been playing the 1.5 version of the game, and there might have been a patch that made me have to do sudden rewrites, so if I sound kinda disorganized and jump between 1.5 and 6, it's because I still want to show the difference between the two versions. Firstly, let's start off with the least gross thing in the original, presentation. The game starts pretty well by topping the cardboard cutout stain in the original. The art looks really good. It straddles a nice line of creepily childlike, but also drawn in an appealing way. Also, adding clothes to Garby helps add detail, although that does now canonically mean that Garby in the original was There's enough disgusting stuff in the original, I shouldn't add more. The menu is also very nicely done. It looks almost exactly like the original, but modeled to look a lot better. The menu didn't have too much wrong, simple, basic, and a decent song that became funny because a few people happened to know what the song was. The same way Walton Files had a good song choice, I was ruined because a few pyros knew what the song is.
I can't take that seriously. You can't play. I was interested in this, and then you play the dementia music? You play the dementia music?
The only problem is that the computer looked crooked as hell. I'm guessing they were trying to make it look like a CRT TV, but heads up, I played Buddy Sim, but you don't have straight lines for a CRT. The remaster fixes this by making it a square monitor, a simple fix that makes it look like a good computer, and they can still make it look like an old monitor. The overall design of the Purgatory is the same, just minor improvements, such as the overuse of the same wood and ground textures being toned down, so no more wood bumps everywhere, and other shit like the negative space on your desk this time being filled with a broken computer. In the original Dormitabis, the desk had a lot of space, just some papers and a fountain drink. Here they add a broken computer and use that fountain drink earlier to help create an invisible divider for the player, separating the left side from the right. So that solves almost everything in the office. Was running under the desk fixed? No? It wasn't the worst issue anyway. Now, another issue that I came into the game worried about was lighting. The original was an issue of being too bright, and although the game's overall atmosphere still kept the game afloat, it did become a major talking point for content creators. However, the devs proceeded to make the game darker. I was worried for a second, as YouTube comments and YouTube video quality made it seem like the game was too dark. No, I meant too dark. No, I said dark, like light.
Wrecking skull. Made me chuckle quite a bit.
No, dark! There, that's better. As I was saying, it made me worry that Dormitabis 2.0 would suffer the opposite problem as OG Dormitib, making it so that the visuals were obscured and it was too hard to navigate. Thankfully, the game executes the lighting really well. At no point when I was playing the game did I ever have a hard time finding the animatronics. It was relatively easy to tell what room I was looking at and to know what was going on. One thing to mention though that is kind of tied to gameplay is when animatronics leave your office. In the original game, there would occasionally be animations of the animatronics entering and leaving. Many people point out that much like this one YouTube short that just so happens to prove my point and make cool horror animations is making a deaf game. Sorry, got sidetracked. Anyway, like this YouTube short, they noticed that some characters have more frames than others, and sometimes animation is one Enderman sound effect at most. Consistency was everyone's main criticism, so the devs must have felt a sigh of relief to know that they won't be criticized for animating poorly, as they chose to do simple disappearing tricks. Okay, that sounded very mean and isn't quite right. There are animations, but they are used much more sparsely. The animations are often only used on characters that are beneficial to see the animation. So for example, Havoc Freddy and Havoc Chica don't have animations of them entering or leaving, and for Freddy, the moment you go to the other side, he disappears immediately without having to look at him, using this sound effect to make sure you know. However, with a character like Havoc Bonnie, whose gimmick is that he goes from one side to the other, needs this, to show that he is moving from one side to the other. It makes sense and it looks good, even if it is simple. There are other characters like Havoc Foxy in the BOA, Havoc Foxy functioning in a similar way to how he did in FNAF 1, only since you're going to the other side, you have to know which direction he's going in. When he enters your office, that animation is used since he ran to your office. Sounds simple now, but keep in mind that he ran to your office. And since the animation of him entering was used, so is his leaving. Soul Cage's gimmick is that he jump scares first, and then you have to look at him, so an animation for him is necessary. Then finally, in the later half of the game, the BOA, an amalgamation of the toy animatronics, has all the heads of the toys turned away from you. This happened in OG Dormita 2, but the remaster perfected this and made it reasonable within the game's pre-established logic. Any character that requires an animation based on its mechanic needs to be animated. Any other character should just be teleported with that Ender Pearl teleporter from Dream SMP.
Mr. Anderson.
This is something that is so simple, but helps clear up the consistency issue so much from the original. The story in the original was a hot mess. To quickly go over our main points here, our first spooky scene, which was supposed to be a dead teenager in a dumpster, is at such a bad angle that you'd be forgiven for missing it because there was supposed to be a dead body. Then you got everything with Garvey, which let's quickly go over through that nonsense. Sounds crazy, but not in a realistic way. He killed someone on night 2 according to our tapes, and by the 3rd he starts acting like someone who visited Epstein Island. Then he had to ruin the iconic "It's Me" line, and aside from killing a brother of his, you can tune out the tapes. Because it's basically killing! Not that. Killing! Our main character, John, also feels inconsequential to the story, aside from being the only survivor of this killing spree up until he died in the FNAF 3 fire. John also has no logical explanation for why he survived. It wasn't elaborated on how John survived, just how everyone but John died. He just gets the "I survived purple guy" medal and dips out until the Lord needs him. The phone guy is also really iffy too. I think his acting is a lot worse than Garvey, because with Garvey, there were times where he tried to sound intimidating and give emotion.
I didn't really want to do this. I didn't want to start doing this again. But they just won't shut up about it!
Not well, but he tried. The phone guy is just very monotone throughout the original. What's weird is that when he drops Golden Call, he does the "it's me" thing too. And it is so monotone. Like for one, okay, I get what you're trying to do, but your joke sucks. But also you executed it poorly. Hell, even in his last phone call when he knows he's about to die, he is more monotone than fucking Andrian from Phantasmagoria.
Oh, hi, Adrian. Can I help you?
Oh, no thanks. Just looking around.
Something kinda interesting is that in that version, he doesn't know if John is alive or not. It kinda fun subversion since it's dropped early on. He is the phone guy from the first FNAF game, but that's about it. So how does the remaster solve this? And all the other lingering lore issues that I can't get into for their stupid idiot for time's sake. Firstly, let's start with John, our voiceless protagonist. He is a massive improvement from the original. In this version, he's the crying child, aka the victim of the bite. This changes the lore drastically, and instead of being one of the kids that bully Garvey for his skin condition that makes him purple, yes, Really? He's part of the family that takes Garvey in. This gives Garvey and John a personal connection and solves the issue of why John would survive these murders, but also helps explain why John now might want to die in a fire with Garvey. This change solves a lot of issues, although it does kind of remove one of my favorite tapes from the lore, where Garvey paid the bullies from FNAF 4 to put Crying Child into the head. But honestly, I mean that from an ironic sense. The tape is funnier than anything. Even Garvey's VA was laughing at that plot point.
Oh my god, incredible! It took $5.
Now, onto Garvey, who in a nice surprise is voiced by the same guy who voiced Garvey in the original. Game Jolt used him the Sparky 556. Firstly, his voice acting is far better than the original. There are a lot more subtleties in this performance. For one, he is more of a meek and reserved individual who slowly descends to madness while initially thinking he's doing it for a good cause. He is also given a lot more early moments with these tapes, with him being unfamiliar with it or getting interrupted by real life. These help to humanize him as a character, which makes it all the more tragic when he goes off the deep end. The writing is a lot better for him. Instead of the bullshit, it's me, fake dramatics to try to get fans excited, even by the time that original Dormit was released, there are plenty of products released just to bait out nostalgia from older products to take advantage of old fans. Garvey is written in a way very reminiscent of analog horror. It is written from the lens of reality and in a way that could happen in reality. But with Garvey's arc in the tapes, especially with his last tape directed towards John, where he admits that, yeah, I probably lost it, and by the time you find me, you should probably get me killed, it hits a lot more than any other tape because this is the culmination of every other tape up until this point. Made even more poignant in Night 10, where you face off against a screen-locked Garvey, and you hear him talk to you. This happened in the original, but not all the good writing. He had lines in Night 10, but...
You realize, don't you? The more you leave me out, the quicker your death will come. So you must open the favor and let me in.
Well, it is the highlight for writing with Garvey, but with the horrible filter and the stupid dramatics make it still suck. But let's try being positive for once in our long and cold lives. Finally, we talk about the phone guy, who is renamed Peter. In the original Dormi, the phone guy and Garvey's brother were separate people. In this version, the phone guy is Garvey's brother, or more accurately, they adopted a 28-year-old schizophrenic introvert. But it also helps with the story still. Peter is a massive improvement. For one, his voice acting is again leagues better, but thanks to him being brothers to John and having a connection to Garvey, the emotions of this once monotone Scott impersonator really come out. Or at least it would have been. They also removed that god-awful It's Me segment, so thank God, but he is also helpful with John, trying to concoct a plan to get out. However, due to circumstances the two are both unaware of, this isn't going to happen. More on that later. Understand that it is very well written, but it also adds to the tragedy of it, because we hear a lot about the tapes with how he still wanted to help Freddy's despite Garvey's resistance, and we see this guy who's trying to still hold on to Hulk just fall into despair, knowing he's a dead man. Holy shit, I've spent so much time on the characters, it's insane. I haven't even gone to the actual story yet, and I'm sidetracked with characters right now. Sorry about that. The overall lore is much improved, though I'm unsure if the skin condition plotline is the same. Probably not. They make the lore a lot more realistic within reality, but also add in more details about the plot. In the original, Garvey was just portrayed as the master murderer who gets away with all these crimes.
Everyone in McKinney is dead.
Here it's more realistic, but Garvey is still portrayed as a force to be reckoned with. See, the inspirational girl with long legs reflects the weight of death. Instead of being violated in the original, she is part of the initial group of bullies for John. In fact, she survived Garvey's first attack, but was killed 4 years later, Garvey just not recognizing her. Much more realistic, and also much more real, because with this little girl/teenager being a survivor, you kinda get the sense that Garvey didn't have perfect plans, but you also wonder what would have happened had the teenager not gotten killed. Or hell, maybe even report the info to the police. Very interesting to think about. You also get to see the reason why Garvey initially killed kids. It's because of the first group, which he blames for John's coma. But after he kills them, he starts to take it out in the restaurant, and then he kills more kids in the hopes that those bodies are then discovered, or at least make news with their disappearance to shut the place down. The tapes show a lot more thought behind why Garvey is doing his actions, while also showing his downward spiral. Oh, and if you were confused about this body in the trash can, that's a separate woman. That comes up much later, but I say that here because of how the lore uses this once infamous aspect to its benefit. Okay, I think that looks a lot better. It looks kind of dumb, but, like, I could not see a body in the original, so I'd say that's actually a lot better. It still looks kind of dumb, though. Just poking its legs out. They also make the lore pretty understandable to go through as well, as a lot of the story is told up front without the, ooh, secret bullshit bullcrap. To be fair, OG Dorm did also try to be more upfront about the lore, but I think the remaster was much better at telling said lore, while also making it, well, good lore. The tapes help tell the lore, but even then, we get smaller details from Peter as well, such as directly referencing John and Garvey's names, and in a way that it communicates their relationships respectively. With John, he's shocked to see him, but also hinting at the fact that John is the crying child. At the same time, Garvey, when he mentions his name, describes him as seeing him as a mistake, as he is worried about the fact that Garvey is in purgatory with him. The game does so many good things to fix the lore beyond removing the icky elements, and I'm glad the remaster put all the effort into fixing the game beyond the obvious issues. Gameplay is probably what OG Door wanted, but due to being too hectic and too difficult, wasn't able to do. Gameplay is hectic in both versions, but despite the fact that the original version had fewer characters, I think the remaster handled the double-digit characters better, and also to make the gameplay easier to understand. But firstly, let's establish the main ground rules for the office. Firstly, you have the defensive side, the side furthest from the doors, generally used to fight off animatronics, though sometimes it isn't best to be there. And your main side, the camera side, you use your computer to do the usual FNAF thing, the doors on your left to your right that I mentioned earlier, although generally you don't look at those for defense. A window behind you which can be used for defense or a way of telling who is closest to your office, and a ceiling so you can watch the cracks for your punishment of slapping Bart Simpson.
Hey, find your own crack.
Okay, sure, sounds hectic, and with my comment about 10 plus animatronics, it sounds worse, but you'd be surprised with the OG version that has fewer animatronics is more chaotic. Firstly, their AI is way too fast. One of the characters, Am I Real, can move on a dime. Wanna know how fast? As fast as I am when I start listening to music, begin to stem out and run around a building like a little kid going to Lego World I was. Additionally, some mechanics are kinda hard to manage when you have characters running back and forth to your office. Golden Call is a horrible example of this. See, when you try to open a Discord call, you need to go to this cam and type out a password running on it correctly, the longest word, and capitalize correctly. If you try to run to the other side, it just decides to do a raid and kills you with 50 beans for like 7 different people just in front of them. Sounds awful? Good, because you know a game is insane when they have enemy rosters for every night. How does the remaster solve this? Firstly, they lower the AI down a pitch so that even by the later nights, they aren't going crazy fast, but they also rework some of the mechanics. Interestingly enough, with the new characters, they're able to add a brand of unexpectedness you'd expect in a remake to shock OG players, but in a way that is not that bad for a game with so many enemies. Now, there's a lot to come through, so let's try making this as quick as possible. I attack on your left and disappear the moment I go to the other side. You could practically stay on the other side. I'm not that big of a threat. I attack from your right, but don't stay on the defensive side or Nightmare Cupcake is going to get withered and decide to attack. Not a threat, but to stop you from staying on defensive side all day. Click the camera I'm in. Be glad I'm not stimming like crazy. I walk from the other side of the line to the other, and I can only be stopped on the camera side, so don't forget about me. Did I scare you? No? Aw, damn, I thought you had caught you off guard. I'd become an easy out for you. If you find me, which isn't that hard to be honest, I'm gonna be your best friend by the end of this game. I'm the friendliest animatronic ever. Look from the camera side and defensive side to get us both out, in that order. Just turn around and scare me off, and you'll be good. The music box is just a cosmetic by now. I am back and have stolen Havoc Puppet's mechanic, making me fairer and sacrificing my individuality. So was it worth it in the end? You decide. I'm like in FNAF, except I tell you which door I go in, and even then, you can go to the other side and not have to check the camera to be sure. I attack from the right, but due to our combined patience we built from seeing video game devs, game players, we take the longest out of everyone. I'm not really sure what kind of voice I can give to 3 kids. I exist to be a much easier, yet more annoying version of this spider leg Animatronics over there. Fuck off! I was brought from the depths of scrapped content to compensate for quoting Post Mechanic being ditched, and somehow typing a code through the cameras is going to be the absolute death of you, even when I'm not the one killing you. And aside from Garvey, who I'll talk about later, that's about it. It's a lot, yes, but the game is smart, utilizing its roster. The game doesn't make the speed that an enemy is and the main difficulty factor, but rather the total enemies at a given moment. The AI does ramp up, but at a much slower rate. This solves the main issue in the original, that being pure chaos. It goes fast, but in a way that is manageable. Hell, even in moments where I was flanked by like 5 people, I was able to figure out a way to micromanage each of them enough to get through it. It only got to difficulty hard chaos by night 9, and thanks to the roster not being everyone in the diner, it's much fairer. Being able to make balancing these enemies possible while not cutting back, hell, even adding more enemies is something that is insanely impressive about this game. There is other stuff that the game does, such as random events. Sometimes Am I Real would take over the screens, trying to obscure your vision. Sometimes he goes away easily, sometimes not so much. There's also the occasional black blurb to cover the screen, clearly a way to hinder the player, but I never found them annoying. The Am I Real stuff might last a bit, but with that in the black blurb, I just switched cams and or turned the cams off and on until it's fixed. I also like the fact that the remaster used a lot of scrapped characters from the original, 3 of them being scrapped characters from the original, actually. This is kinda interesting, and not in a good way given, well, Mr. Self-Inserting Idiot, but I think they make it work and separate enough from Blackout's work. Dawnbreaker was a character designed to be for a free roam game, which the original was until they pivoted.
It'll happen to you.
Here they make Dawnbreaker an asset for the player if a night is very difficult. Then with characters like Havoc Little Shits and the Spring Lich, the devs can then come up with more unique mechanics to make them stand out. The only original new animatronic, Havoc Bonnie, also is a highlight. His mechanic is easily the best use of the looking mechanic and helps with making it so the camera side isn't useless for defense. My biggest criticism of the game overall is hitboxes. The mouse can be kind of finicky with collecting tapes, and sometimes I would really struggle with picking up tapes, and with the camera system, sometimes it would work instantly, sometimes it would need 2 or more. I think with the camera at least, they made it intentional so it can cause panic, but with the tapes, it's really fucking annoying, especially when you want to get them for the true ending. Thankfully, with the tapes, once you collect them, even if you die, you'll have them, and with the camera system, they make some nice improvements. I already mentioned Screen Lich. Even if it is painful with Screen Lich, the camera is made to be user-friendly, but a uniquely designed challenge for the player. The camera map was interesting in the original, although it can be unique and very annoying to move out of the way, especially if you move it out of the way and then you can't pull it back. Here they have a reset button to help move the camera tab back, and the game has an invisible wall to keep it in place. It's super helpful since it makes it so you don't have to worry about moving the camera out of the way and you can no longer grab it, and since the camera fakiness isn't with the tab itself, you're able to identify what's going on and move the camera out of the way. Otherwise, it's a minor complaint that was fixed to not be an issue, but an interesting aspect. Except for the fact that closing the tab is finicky and the hitbox problem from earlier, that sucks. Alright, I feel like getting negative because of how things panned out, so let's start with something else that's important: technical issues.
Technology!
Firstly, one bug that would occasionally occur is if BOA and Am I Real were in Cam 9 at the same time, BOA just eats an entire chunk of Am I Real's pixels. Am I Real probably feels violated after that. Then, and also a pretty bad bug, when I decided to check on all the night phone calls, I used the night selection screen to go from nights 1 to 8 since I replayed night 9 before that. We're on not night later, but guess what happened after that? Every night from night 2 onward was erased from my progress. All of it, gone, and I had to do it all over again. Oh. Oh, you bitch. You bitch. No. Oh no, you just did not do that to me. That is fucked. That is insane, right? Well, this hasn't been my first time. In another game I played, Curve Me Goat, I got into a similar situation. Only in that, I was moving my foot around and knocked the extension cord out. Not just using the night selection screen, I didn't even hit new game. It was awful. That's not making peace. You stood up to the other even though we had a gun. You're just killing everyone. You're wrong. It's making peace for the ones who remain. That's not killing everyone. This is killing everyone. There are 2 more other bugs, but a little hint that's coming up later. 2 time codes, actually. That's not even the worst part. I was willing to play the game all over again just to get back to where I started. But when I re-listened to Garvey's last tape, I then teleported to the cardboard theater, and as soon as that was finished, I finally got access to night 12. Meaning I spent several hours thinking I had to start over completely when it was all for nothing. But I had to rant about that a little, so... Sound design is really good. They use a lot of the same sound effects, although better utilized. This segment is pretty short, but I do like it, and with Soul Cage, they make good use of the AI and new sound effects. However, I need to get a bit negative, because there is one spot the game fucks up, and that is when the animatronics enter. Now, this sounds simple, but what's the issue? Well, it's the defensive side, because when a sound triggers, it's not from your perspective, but the perspective that the camera side gives you. So let's say an animatronic attacking from your left, but the sound effect comes from the left door, aka the door that would be left of the camera here, because it just fucks over the player so much. I don't know why the deaths didn't make any sort of indicator for the game that if you are on defensive, sound effects are flicked, but it was so annoying as hell. Like, God, if you're lucky, you realize the game is a dog that doesn't know not to pee on the carpet. At worst, it makes you want to jump into a lake of piranhas in comparison, because that would be less painful and aggravating. Something that came with the patch was Peter's phone calls were re-recorded. However, in my personal opinion, these calls aren't that good. In 1.5, Peter was a lot more vocal and had a voice that got your attention. He also had some moments where he was going through his side of gameplay trying to survive Foxy. But in 1.6, he became really quiet, even though realistically, he knows that animatronics know where he is, so it really doesn't matter. Plus, he's freaking out about Foxy making some lewd narrative sense, considering how Foxy is, well, fucking Foxy.
Okay, never mind. Look, I gotta go. Fox is in here, so I don't have myself. Never let me speak to you again.
He is whispering about an animatronic attacking that is running straight at him. Regardless of that, on a happier note, Peter's phone calls are pretty helpful in both versions, except until a certain point where he stops helping you. It's annoying, especially when he generalizes future enemies as, oh, it's like everyone else before, which doesn't help when you have wildcards such as the window animatronics and Foxy. Sounds annoying, but it's a massive improvement from the original, where it felt like he didn't cover them at all, just mentioned they existed. Here, it's late enough in the game that it's not that bad, like with BOA, where he says, oh, it's basically like everyone else. You can infer he's a door animatronic, and with Spring Lich, even though Peter doesn't tell you, his mechanic is blatantly obvious. You can still figure it out even with the volume being muted. Plus, it leads into our final act. But 30 years have passed and patrons renewed the franchise, rebuilt the nightmare. Poor fools. What the fuck have they done? We're coming for you! Alright, so by this point, Peter has found a key. He thinks that it can help them escape. This is important, but at night 8, when he ended up searching the back rooms, which he deduced was part of the Purgatory, given that the Purgatory traps exclusively people important to the events in the FNAF timeline. Peter later found a second key. He also found what he discovered to be Garvey, a horrible indication, since by this point, even if you haven't picked up on the tapes, the back rooms can mean only one thing. A monster! Oh yeah, and for FNAF fans, the second key, it seems hope can be held out, but when night 9 hits, the lack of any art for the loading screen and no tip ends up being an indication of the horrific reality. Turns out Peter lied about the second key, just trying to hold on to hope for survival, but when Garvey woke up, he began his day with 3 shots of espresso and homicide, killing every other animatronic. But we're facing the other animatronics right now. Oh right, that was the original game, don't worry, we don't have to do that. 78 animatronics right now. Oh right, the patch happened and fucks even that up. How is that possible? Well, the truth is that in reality, Peter and John were 1 day apart, Peter being at least a day ahead, and it's implied that he survived for years with this comment.
I don't even think I'm the same Peter you've recognized. I don't even think I'm real anymore. Just get the fuck out of this place, John. It's the best I can hope for.
This is really smart. In the original, when Garvey was released, it was just relegated to a bad decision on the phone guy's part. But here, there are much more layers to it. Peter in the tapes has an established trait of still lingering on to hope, even if it doesn't make sense. But he isn't an idiot. The backrooms issue is still a bad decision, but you hear Peter survive against the animatronics, so it accomplishes a nice dichotomy for Peter. He survived for a long time, not just in the Purgatory, but in the FNAF establishments. But here, his last chance of life is gone. The 1 day apart twist also resolves a massive plot hole from OG2, that being that all the animatronics are attacking you, despite the fact that phone guy told you that Garvey just killed them all. Another thing that is fixed is an Easter egg in the original. See, in the original, if you hang up the phone guy too many times, he decides to get really petty, hang himself, and get rid of the audio of the game. It's a good idea in concept. The problem is the audio thing is kinda too much to deal with, especially in a chaotic game like this, let alone the original even more so. Removing the sound is basically trying to play FNAF 4 on mute. It's literally impossible. And even if you did survive, doesn't that retroactively create a plot hole with Peter still calling you? Instead, it's a scripted moment. If you listen to the call and keep your eye on the camera, eventually it shifts to a scene of Peter's hanged body. The hanged up message now changed to hang, and then you remember Peter's comment about how he isn't letting Garvey kill him.
I just can't take this. I won't let Garvey have the satisfaction of killing me. I know I suck at goodbye, so I'll just let you know. I'm gonna hang up. For good this time, John. See you on the flip side.
It's horrifying and tragic. The remaster also doesn't remove your audio, which is also good, so thanks. You can skip the scene by just hanging up, which, while it makes more narrative sense, I do kind of feel like it loses the impact of the original scene since it punishes players for hanging up, but I get with a brand new story, you can't really do that, so I can forgive that. Night 9 is a weird night as it is. Let's start with 1.5 first. Night 9 is hard as hell, holy shit! Okay, so like, you know how I mentioned the AI ramps up slowly and only at a certain amount of enemies are used? Well, it seems like it's the worst enemies to face off against and at its worst difficulty. Spring Lynch made me waste so much time when facing off when animatronics are at my door, I could not stay calm. Foxy is back, and my strategy of simply watching his cam as much as possible wasn't as viable anymore, and Havoc Little Shits and BOA made my situation worse by existing. Combine that with both Golden Call and the Puppet, with Am I Real stimming more than ever, and I was in hell for this. Editing me, I wish you the best of luck on this hell. Well, I ended up getting the scene surprisingly quickly, but to just quickly go through my thoughts, I feel like at least one of the animatronics should have been removed so that it was a little more possible. It's possible, just really difficult, and even in this, there were times where I flubbed up. Something I forgot to mention was that in the Easter eggs, there was a Angle character who is going to come up in the video, but given that there really hasn't been like a full like basic consensus of what is going on with Mangle, I'm not going to be able to talk about it in this video, but basically, Night 9 sucks, fuck it, I hope it burns in a fire, I'm glad I'll never have to play that shit ever again. Okay, insanely hard, yeah, what about the patch, right? I mean, it's one of those penultimate nights, so just remove one of the animatronics is fine, right? I completed that night on my first try, and it's sure as hell no there wasn't as much skill in it. See, the game says that 10 animatronics were on that night, but in reality, it's 7, and 2 of them aren't listed as active on the roster. I was shocked to get to 3 AM so easily when one of the biggest criticisms was that I was overwhelmed like crazy. And I wasn't even overwhelmed in a way that I can still manage around it. No, I handled the night perfectly. That is not Night 9, that is Night -9. Adding Dawnbreaker doesn't change much, he's just here to help, so he's not really a problem. So technically, it's 6 animatronics. I was hoping for one of the animatronics to be removed, but something wrong definitely happened here. As for Night 10, you face off against Garvey. You have a last note from Peter telling you what he figured out about him before he died. A great detail is that no phone call begins to ring. It sounds incidental, but in OG duh, they kept the ringing even though nobody calls, so glad they fixed that. 2 issues I do have with it is the vent maps. Here you don't have to worry about the other cameras unless you're looking for the tape, so that's nice, but with the vent camera, it's kind of weird. Okay, so this is me editing, coming back in to quickly just fuck with the analog to quickly re-explain something that I kind of misunderstood, but hopefully this makes sense. The map isn't upside down. What it is that on the camera, specifically with the top part, like over here, it says you, as in like you're at this point. But when you go to defensive side, you go to this point over here. I thought it was that the map itself was flipped, but no, it's rather like when you go to the other side, the left side on the map here turns into the left side on the defensive side, and then like that. It's not like how it is on camera side, where the left side on defensive side is the right side on camera side. But I thought I'd clear that up just because, like, I feel like it's a better way of explaining it, but it doesn't change my critique, but, you know, you'll see what past Tripled thought of this. Yeah. Goodbye. Merry Christmas. Sorry for being so late. The map starts at north when before it started at south. Essentially, the map is upside down. This confused the hell out of me, but I did get used to it. Garvey also has voice lines, something common in the original. It's not bad, and it's much better in Ruin. Hashtag relatable. Oh, don't worry, I know. I'm an animatronic too. I get it. I get it. I don't get the murder though, but I get it. There is one nitpicky thing for me though. Garvey's voice lines are baked into the audio, which is very noticeable, as sometimes you will die or hear him laugh, but then at the same time you can hear him spouting off at John. It's not a big deal, but it's very obvious. It's a shame because you can tell that Garvey's VA, the Sparky 556, really put his heart and soul into redeeming his previous work. So to have that be there is annoying. It doesn't ruin the night at all though, especially when you have raw fucking writing and delivery like this.
I did this for anything? You think I did this for myself? For pleasure? For power? I did this for you! You just won't accept it! You just keep haunting me. You keep acting like I was in the wrong. And maybe I was. Maybe I shouldn't have done what I did. But I did it for you. The least you can do is fucking thank me! John!
Aside from that, tough boss fight, and a great night. But we can't get into excruciating gameplay. I actually wanted to talk about this ending moment. This heart. In the original game, it was never explained, just a disturbing visual, but here it's meant to be more symbolic. This heart represents the fact that Garvey felt he was tearing his heart out for John, which is why the camera was replaced. A piece of symbolism that only works in this timeline. That's awesome. Anyway, the scene is the same. Garvey chases you, breaks down the window, and in the least intriguing scene ever, despite the characters involved, we get the bad end, with Garvey killing you, or at least in a way it could go either way. Turns out despite how this QTE looks, it does actually have an effect on gameplay. For some reason, I was under the impression it didn't, and when I was replaying the game to get back when I started, I did nothing and got killed. Because I'm a fucking moron. So for intensive purposes, John did survive, and we'll just say this grave was placed before he entered Purgatory. Night 11 is now a factor, Nightmare Mode. A mode that I knew was going to be hard, but I guess I got normal mode because I saw David Barrett's stream, and Screenwitch was in it. It is still difficult because it's the game's equivalent of Night Portal's sister location. The animatronic choices are tough to deal with Foxy specifically. I had to try balancing out where now we can stall him out because, believe me, RNG is a bitch, and sometimes I would be overwhelmed with no chance of surviving. It was so hard that it was the only night I died to Am I Real, who I never had any problems with prior. But the game won't put me down. Why? Well, remastered, there's something that OG I didn't know I have. A very particular set of skills. I had the resilience to push through this bullshit, and no god-awful RNG is gonna stop me. And it didn't, because with enough motivation, determination, and time in the day, I did it. Yes! Holy shit, I did it! I did it! Fuck yeah! Oh my god, first fucking try too. While I was happy, the night did bring up an odd problem, mainly difficulty curve. So starting with 1.5, Night 9 felt more difficult than Nights 10 and 11. Night 10, while difficult and kind of confusing, was very beatable. It just required some good focus. Night 11, while it can really have bad RNG, because of the roster, I was able to turn it into a bit of a logic formula. The left door always has Freddy and only Freddy. Focus on Soul Cage first, and if I manage to take Soul Cage first, anyone I hear on my right is someone I can look at. It doesn't really matter who it is. The only worries I had were Golden Call and Puppet, but if I focused on the doors first, I could knock out Golden Call very quickly. The Puppet is more of a worry, but on the round I did win, I got really lucky, and the Puppet only attacked me when no one else was close to me. I also felt like there was a more clear sense of accomplishment from getting Night 11. Like, I was excited about getting the night done with, same with Night 10, but with something like Night 9, I didn't feel that. I was just like, God, fucking finally. It felt more like gambling, except for dopamine sector didn't trigger, and you just wanted to get the jackpot so you can get the fuck out. As I said for version 1.6, Night 9 is comically easy, so you don't really feel like you've earned it. Night 10 is essentially the same as far as I can tell. While Nightmare Mode is difficult, it's basically a slightly less harder version. Still tough and rewarding to beat, but it doesn't change my point. Since Nights 1 through 8 were going easy, then slowly getting higher and higher, Night 9 then drops lower than my viewer's attention span, then jumps right up. As for how 1.6 affects Night 11, I mean, they add stream much back, so I had the official experience, but to be honest, I wouldn't have complained with Night 11 either way. I didn't even care if it takes me a while. Although to quickly get back to Night 11, something they do add is that on the window, since it's now broken, all the characters now have different positions when they're looking through the window. I like it. It's really cool. With that, we see a crying child with no clear indication of who they are, just that they are...
Hey, congrats, John. You're doing good. There are only a few more things to go through, and once you do that, we can all get out of hell. Except for maybe those who died. But still, we're almost done.
And here we get easily the one bit from the original that everyone, mostly liked, but found really extremely difficult, the cardboard theater. Here your objective is simple. Playing as Garvey, you must reenact the timeline constructed by the tapes. Something that I really like about this is that you actually get extra tidbits of lore here. For example, this little girl ended up becoming the teenager that Garvey would kill later. That is something that wasn't brought up in the tapes, and it's an interesting revelation when playing for the first time. You could see other stuff such as the little shits being twins, thus adding to the irony there in the BB and JJ suits, but also adding more layers to the lore. The 1.6 version definitely is a much better patched version of this segment. Why? Well, because of the 15-year-old isn't impossible to pull back. When I tried the 1.5 version, spamming was a pure nightmare. It was impossible to move the girl into Chica. I thought it would take days to get her in. The patch fixes this by making spamming not as painful, while still requiring a bit of a struggle to get through. After that, this kid is a simple hold space, and the only time I had to spam was when I was chasing a security guard with a tuba.
That'll be $60.
And hey, the time limit isn't that bad. At worst, you get like 6 seconds remain. Sounds like very little time, but in the original, the most common time I saw people have was 1 second just before the end of the minigame. The only thing to criticize now would be bugs at this point, but the minigame is perfected, right? Well, unfortunately. What the fuck? What the fuck? What the fuck? What the fuck? Otherwise, everyone fucking dies! I was hoping for that. I was hoping that would happen the moment I say that. After you listen to the 10th tape and get that cardboard theater done, you get Night 12 unlocked with a final piece of information. Type, am I real? Oh, things are gonna get good. So in case you weren't aware, actually, you probably were aware given how easily accessible it was. If you click on Am I Real in the extras of the original, you can play a minigame where you have to keep pressing his nose until you eventually get jump scared. Here, you don't have very easy access to his minigame. After all, it's a FNAF player's instinct to boop anything with a nose. Making it something still somewhat solvable given prior knowledge is something that is great for old players because it actually makes it a challenge to find out. And for new players, it's not something they can accidentally find out before they intended to. As for the minigame, it's a lot more dramatic with a randomly bop heavy metal song firing in the background and animatronics flashing in said background. Even crazier, they have half-body models of Nightmare Freddy and maybe even Withered Bonnie appear. It's kinda awesome, although I will miss the original music from the original. That was also pretty good. I'm also pretty sure this minigame is patched to be harder, as I saw David Barron's stream and he nailed it while I struggled for a bit. Mainly because you need to use 2 fingers to click faster, plus it's best to click the middle screen just before the minigame starts. Otherwise, the entire scene is basically the same. With that, we have everything we need, and we go into the final night. Wait, hold up! To quickly go into an intermission, I would like to talk about the game's artwork and design. Some not liking that most of the designs were either make-o or trying to seem like they actually came from hell. Oh hey, they have natural hallucinogenic effects too. Neat. Plus a lot of people thought the models looked god-awful, combined with the fact that in the extra menu, because of their animations, it looked really dumb, with almost all of them moving really fast. I'm personally fine with the mangled designs. It fits since the Purgatory encapsulates the worst that came from the OG FNAF timeline, so it doesn't bother me that much. I do like that the remastered remaster tried to make the designs more hellish, such as making them more withered and mossy, plus Soul Cage got a slight revamp, which makes it more terrifying. Plus, while jump scares are somewhat tuned in, I think they're a lot better than the previous jump scares. Plus, they removed the lead-up sound effect to the end of jump scares, which is very devious for older players. Plus, in an even more devious twist, they use that sound effect to lean up to the end of the night as a way to fuck them over even more. And if you've noticed the repetition of the word plus throughout my writing style, you can tell they are essentially the same design. I'm not that mad, although some players might not be as receptive. The most different design is definitely Soul Cage. It looks a lot more terrifying compared to the original. In extras, though, it kinda does deflate it, since it still has the spire legs. But if I've learned anything, it doesn't matter about what's inside, it's how you present it. That's why dogs get excited about stuff, even if you're saying something that isn't actually a good thing for dogs at all. As for Cardboard Theater, as I said earlier, I like how it looks, and I like the extra segments they add to the events of FNAF 3. It's a nice surprise from the original, and it's cool to see some Springtrap art in there, given that it's essentially Garvey. Finally, the loading screens have some extra art. The art is very cool. I have a soft spot for 2D art in a FNAF game, and while I haven't played it, Playtime at Percy is a good example of how that style can work. Here, the loading screens do give a summary of the tutorial explanation, but the art is also really good. Like, look at this. It's great. Something interesting that happens in the game is the random events and Easter eggs that can trigger. The most common are random events such as scenes of the animatronics like Golden Call and Garvey celebrating before the night begins. But some of my favorite events are stuff like a child screaming in 4D audio on night 11, and stuff like Havoc Mangle appearing on night 9. Hell, they even brought back Havoc Freddy's minigame. I haven't played it or plan to since it seems incidental, but it does lead into something interesting. There is, or probably was, a third ending according to the devs, specifically with Havoc Mangle. The fittingly named Dev Expelled, that was the person that got expelled, gave some codes and some people have figured it out, plus the extras menu, despite listing the third ending as scrapped, implies that it could be a lie, while the person running 3X Studios at the time was laughing about it. Now, regardless of his actions, I will say this. I completely understand where he was coming from. I would laugh as well, because you bitches still haven't figured out that I worked on a 90-minute video essay, and yet I forgot a fourth ending. You guys are doing horribly. I use Walton logic and you still haven't figured it out. By the way, here's some hints if you really care. Also, extra side note, currently Expelled Studios has rebranded. Expelled is currently, like, demoted, basically. Please don't go after any of the devs. It seems the drama, or whatever the fuck was going on with that, has ended. So please, just be fucking mature. Although, to be fair, it's YouTube. I don't think we should be surprised. But please, please, if there's one thing I want to stress in YouTube is just, like, be a mature adult, basically. Don't, like, fuck around and then basically find out that they were innocent. That's all. Anyway, where were we? Oh yeah, night 12. Night 12 doesn't give you much information. You have to figure it out. It's super simple though. On cams, you have to find the puppet, stare him down, and he'll fuck off. However, when Am I Real, or as we now know him, Cake Bear, gets close to you, you have to look at your camera. Sound simple? Well, yeah, breaking it down, it actually is. But your camera battery is insanely small, and it takes a bit to charge it up, so you can't just stay on the camera all the time. I think with this, since there is no tutorial, the main thing is that once you know how the animatronics work, you can basically ace this night. Like, I haven't even played the night, and I feel very confident in my chances. Here's how I actually did. Oh, I'm definitely dead. That is admittedly a cool jump scare, but I fucked it up. Game over. Try again, John. Yeah. Oh, I love this song. Holy shit, I love this one. Oh, hell yeah! Oh man, I love this one! Oh, hell yeah, I love this song! I love this song! Thank you, Purgatory, this is the best song I've heard in years! Holy shit! I'm fucking sponsoring Purgatory, guys! Purgatory, here's a sponsorship! Yeah! With a pretty awesome song to end it. Hell yeah. Interesting. Very interesting. I do like how the diner you're in is designed. It communicates a lot about the lore since you see the trash can with the dead body in it, and the take cake to children messaging also implying a lot about Cake Bear and also how the woman died. It is also very beautifully designed. The diner you're in, you get an idea of what's going on and you realize how lore significant this area is, while also being very pretty. But once we beat the night, we see the box. We finally learned the last bit of lore. The woman who was killed in the trash can is the wife of Alex Wright. Alex and his wife, Julia, were the parents to John. Cake Bears was the original location. Alex was very heavily suspected of being the killer, but despite the rebrands and even Alex being cleared of those charges, no one ever looked at Alex the same way. It's unknown who murdered the mom, but in the end, it didn't matter. Because of her death, all of these events are set in motion. John's negative feelings for the establishment, made worse by his bullying, eventually leading to his coma. Soon, Garvey kills those bullies, eventually becoming what he always hated, a desperate Peter trying to cling to hope, only getting killed by his brother. And Alex, one of the only players to survive this nightmare, outliving everyone he ever cared for, even his children. It's finally over. They say some things are better left forgotten, for now. Well, now is the time what was forgotten can be put to rest. Even Dormitabis itself, what we all wish we had forgotten, that too is put to rest. Overall, while I love the game, I don't think this is a perfect game. There are plenty of stuff to nitpick and some genuine flaws, but considering what came before it, the original Dormitabis was a game panned by critics, only made popular because of the Markiplier effect. It had a story that aged poorly, but people were mostly concerned about the blackout fuckery. The game could have just removed those icky elements and then update the graphics, and no one would have complained, at least not as much. But that wasn't enough for these devs. They put their heart and soul into rectifying this game, getting the original VA for Garvey, and even introducing a bunch of new mechanics that made it so much more interesting, and to surprise those who still couldn't get that bad taste in their mouths from the original. I'd highly recommend this game if you're interested. Even if you watch the video, I think the gameplay is so good you can totally enjoy it while knowing everything. Regardless of the drama going on, it's clear that the devs mostly had good intentions and acted on it, and never let that waver, despite what extras indicate to be a lot of internal drama. With that, I conclude this video. I'm Tripled, thanks for watching, and good night.